Greetings everyone. Welcome to CEC Gurukul lectures. I am Mehak Chawla, art educator, Bharatanatyam dancer and disciple of Guru Srimati Geeta Chandranji. In this lecture, we are going to study about cultures of India from the early to late medieval period and development of Indian theatre tradition and textual foundations of performing arts. So, having examined the Deccan expressive and architecturally ambitious performance culture, we now shift eastward to the Pala and Sena dynasties of Bengal and Bihar. In this region, Buddhist ritual performance and esoteric dance tradition created a contrasting yet equally influential artistic world, one that shaped Himalayan and Eastern traditions, Indian performance practices for centuries, Palas and Senas. As we move eastward from the sculptural richness of the Deccan, the cultural landscape undergoes a profound transformation under the Pala and Sena dynasties. While the Deccan focused heavily on temple-centered Shiva and Vaishnava traditions, Eastern India became the heartland of Buddhist ritual culture, shaping a distinctive artistic and performative environment. This period marks one of the most sophisticated phases of Buddhist artistic expression in the subcontinent, especially within the context of Vajrayana and Mahasamgika traditions. Unlike the expressive dynamism of Chalukya Rashtrakuta art, the Pala and Sena traditions emphasized meditative stillness, esoteric symbolism, and ritual performativity, offering a different yet equally rich conception of movement and expression. The Pala dynasty in particular was renowned for prioritizing the major Buddhist universities, including Nalanda, Vikramshila, Sompura and Odantapuri. These centuries were not only academic institutions but also cultural laboratories where ideas, rituals and performative practices evolved. Monastic ritual life incorporated dance, chanting, mudras, mandala, worship and symbolic movement, making performance an integral part of the esoteric Buddhist sadhana. The iconic Pala bronze statues, celebrated for their elegant, elongated forms and intricate ornamentation, capture divine beings and tantric yoginis in graceful dance postures. Their fluid bodies, arched backs and rhythmic stances reflect a movement vocabulary that is both physically and metaphysically embodying the unity of form and spiritual intention. One of the most remarkable contributions of this period is the development of Charya Nritya, a meditative dance tradition rooted in Vajrayana Buddhism. Charya was not merely aesthetic performance, it was a spiritual discipline combining mantra, mudra, nritya and dhyan. Practitioners performed symbolic gestures and movements designed to embody divine qualities, particularly those of tantric deities such as Vajrayogini, Tara and Avalokiteshvara. This performative tradition later spread to Nepal, where it continues to survive as Charya Nritya. and Charyagiti, shaping the spiritual and cultural identity of Kathmandu Valley. The Pala period thus stands as the crossroads of Indian classical dance evolution and Himalayan ritual performance. The Sena dynasty, on the other hand, though more aligned with Brahminical Hinduism, continued many artistic conventions established by the Palas. Their architecture and sculpture maintained the Pala aesthetic, refined, rhythmic, and symbolically changed in temple imagery and manuscript illustrations. We observe musicians with stringed instruments, rhythmic drummers, and dancers captured in fleeting expressive poses. These images confirm that although Buddhism was gradually receding the artistic culture, it fostered remained deeply rooted in Eastern Indian society. This region's artistic vocabulary, especially its emphasis on graceful lines, meditative expression, and symbolic gestures, contributed significantly to the broader Indian performing art tradition. While the South and West refined Nāṭyaśāstra based karanas, the East cultivated esoteric performativity, creating one of the most diverse and multi-layered cultural tapestries of the early medieval world. Now, if we study about the Pratiharas of northern continuation of classical iconography, the rise of Pratihara dynasty in northern India marks an important phase in the preservation and renewal of classical artistic traditions. At a time where northern regions were experiencing political contestations and shifting power centers, the Pratiharas played a decisive role in stabilizing cultural life. Their rule acted as a bridge between earlier classical ideals and the emerging regional styles. Instead of breaking away from the established aesthetic vocabulary, they reinforced and revitalized it, ensuring that classical iconography continued to flourish in distinctly northern idiom. This commitment to tradition was reflected in their sculpture, temple architecture, and visual representations of dance and music, all of which reveal a deep reverence of inherited conventions combined with subtle local adaptations. Now, let's study about the artistic vision and aesthetic ideals. Building upon the classical foundations laid by the Gupta and post-Gupta traditions, the Pratiharas cultivated an artistic language characterized by clarity, balance, and refinement. Sculptures working under their patronage favored well-proportioned figures with smooth yet confirm contours, expressive faces, and dynamic postures that conveyed both physical strength and spiritual grace. While the aesthetic sensibility remained rooted in classical canons, the Pratiharas encouraged greater decorative detail, leading to more elaborate jewelry, patterned drapery, and intricately carved hair arrangement. This emphasis on ornamental richness enhanced the visual appeal of icons without compromising the structural integrity of form. Now, let's study about the iconography of dance and music. One of the most striking contributions of Pratiharas art lies in its continuation of classical iconography related to dance. Temple walls across regions such as Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and parts of Uttar Pradesh reveal an impressive array of dancing figures, musicians, and scenes of rhythmic celebration. Many sculptures depict Karanas, dynamic movement units described in Nāṭyaśāstra, preserved with remarkable accuracy. These representations show that the knowledge of classical dance vocabulary not only survived but was actively practiced and visually documented in northern India during this period. Musicians playing instruments like the veena, drum, and flute also appear frequently, demonstrating the integrated presence of performance arts in sacred and secular life. Now, let's move to the temple architecture as cultural spaces. The Pratiharas temples themselves became important laboratories of artistic expression. Structures such as those at Gwalior, Ossian, and Khajuraho illustrate how temple architecture served as both a religious space and a cultural archive. The exterior walls, filled with detailed narrative and performative sculptures, functioned almost like stone textbooks, displaying the nuances of posture, rhythm, and gesture. These temples reflect an environment where performing arts were not peripheral activities but central expressions of divine aesthetic experience. The imagery of apsaras, gandharvas, and celestial musicians emphasized that the sacred realm itself was imagined as a world animated by music and dance. Now, let's move on and study about the broader cultural significance. Through this sustained artistic endeavor, the Pratiharas ensured that classical iconography did not fragment despite political shifts and regional diversification. Their artistic legacy shows a conscious effort to uphold the idealized body, the codified gestures, and the symbolic language that earlier traditions had developed. At the same time, their art reveals a distinctly northern flavor, more robust, more detailed, and more dynamically composed, demonstrating how classical foundations can evolve while maintaining continuity. Let's move to the Chola period, the zenith of temple dance and classical arts. The Chola period represents one of the most luminous chapters in the history of Indian performing arts. Emerging in the fertile landscape of the Kaveri Delta, the Cholas built a political and cultural empire that combined administrative strength with extraordinary artistic vision. Their rule marks a moment when temple culture reached unparalleled heights, architecturally, visually, ritually, and performatively. Unlike many dynasties that merely patronized the arts, the Cholas institutionalized them, giving dance, music, sculpture, and ritual performance an integrated and central role within the sacred and social life of the region. This atmosphere of holistic cultural development made the Chola period a true zenith of in the history of classical arts. Now let's study about the devotional ideology and artistic integration. The Chola cultural imagination was deeply shaped by the Bhakti movement, particularly Shiva Siddhant. This devotional ideology influenced not only temple rituals but also the aesthetics of dance and music. Temples were conceptualized as living organism centers where divine presence was made palpable through daily rituals, processions, festivals, and performances. Dance and music were not ornamental additions but essential offerings to the deity. This integration of artistic expression into devotional practice meant that performing artists occupied a sacred space within the social order. The devadasi system, supported by elaborate temple grants and administrative records, ensured that trained dancers were a permanent part of temple functioning, participating in rituals from dawn to dusk. Now let's move and study about the temple architecture as stage of performance. The architectural brilliance of the Chola period provided a grand physical setting for this flourishing of the arts. Monumental temples such as the Bṛhaddeśī temple at Tanjavur, Gangaikonda Cholapuram and Dharasuram were not merely places of worship, they were carefully designed cultural stages. Expansive courtyards allowed for processional dances. Mandap served as performance halls, and richly carved niches created visual reference points for dance vocabulary. Sculptures of celestial dancers and musicians adorned every surface, forming a rhythmic visual narrative that echoed the sensibilities of the performing arts. These temples became encyclopedias in stone, displaying an astonishing variety of poses, gestures, and musicianship that reflected both classical treatises and living traditions. Now let's study about the bronze sculpture and the idealized dancing form. One of the most iconic contributions of the Chola period is the bronze image tradition, especially the world-renowned figure of Nataraja, Shiva, as the Lord of Dance. The Chola bronzes embody the perfect synthesis of philosophy, aesthetics, and craftsmanship. The Nataraja icon, with its balanced posture, controlled dynamism, and emotive expression, symbolizes the cosmic dance of creation and dissolution, while also providing a template for classical dance movement. The bronze's fluid lines, subtle musculature, and expressive faces reflect a profound understanding of bodily rhythm and emotional nuance. Their portable nature allowed them to be taken out in processions, making dance not only an observed art but a living ritual experience. Codification, training, and artistic lineages. The Chola period also marked the strengthening of pedagogical lineages in the performing arts. Inscriptions refer to dance teachers as Natvannas, musicians, percussionists, and performers attached to temples with clearly defined roles and remuneration. This system created a stable institutional environment for the transmission of dance and music across generations. The coordination between Natuvannars, vocalists, instrumentalists, and dancers reflects a sophisticated performance structure that continues to shape performing art today. Music, too, was enriched by development in melodic and rhythmic structures seen in the refinement of precursors to ragas and talas used in temple liturgy. Now let's study about the wider cultural influence. The Chola artistic influence extended far beyond the boundaries of Tamil Nadu. Through maritime trade and cultural exchange, Chola aesthetics reached Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and various parts of the Indian Ocean world. Temples in Cambodia, Indonesia, and Thailand display clear Chola architectural and iconographic resonances. This wider cultural reach ensured that the Chola artistic legacy became part of broader Asian heritage. Now let's study about the development of theatre traditions in India across all the periods. Indian theatre traditions evolved over thousands of years, growing from ritualistic expression to sophisticated regional performance forms. These traditions blend music, dance, narrative, costumes, masks, and ritual elements, making Indian theatre an integral art form. Across prehistoric, early historic, and medieval phases, various regions produced their own styles rooted in local belief systems, community practices, and regional languages. These traditions not only entertained audiences but also shaped the cultural memory of communities, becoming the living foundation of classical Indian theatre as codified in texts like the Nāṭyaśāstra. Now let's study about the early folk theatre tradition, one which is regional roots and its ritual behavior. It's the earliest forms of Indian theatre were deeply tied to rituals, seasonal cycles, ancestor worship, and oral storytelling. Many folk theatres from prehistoric to early medieval times are characterized by narrative singing, dramatic improvisation, vibrant costumes, and community participation. Forms like Yakshagana from Karnataka, Terukuthu from Tamil Nadu, Bhavna from Assam, Jatra from Bengal, and Bhavai from Gujarat are examples of this rich heritage. These performances often narrate stories of local deities, heroes, and mythological episodes, blending humor, music, dance, and dialogue. Even though these forms may not always follow strict classical rules, they inherently embody desi, which is regional style, traditions which complement the margi, which is the classical style traditions discussed in Sanskrit theatre. As these early traditions took root in specific geographic regions, they evolved unique structural, musical, and performative patterns, giving rise to a variety of distinct folk theatre genres across India. With this, I conclude my lecture. Thank you.